Hello and welcome to my ninth video here on the plant-based weight loss video blog. And this is a video I would have recorded a few days ago, but it's been a roller coaster few days, which I'll explain here shortly. But what I was planning on doing for this video was a kind of a continuation of my previous one, where I talk a little bit more about the body image issues that can occur when you're overweight. And with me, it was kind of a thing where when I was young, I was already a big kid, and I was never super overweight, but I was definitely a chunky kid, from very early on. Going into kindergarten, I was already over 4 feet and I believe over 100 pounds. And then I also remember that I hit 200 right after my 13th birthday when I was about 5 feet 9. And that would have put me at maybe 35 pounds overweight. But back then in the late 70s and early 80s, that kind of thing was less common, and it really singled you out and it was a big deal. Now, a very scary percentage of kids in school are overweight, so you might get picked on by some of the skinnier ones, but you've got company. Whereas, years ago, not so much. Excuse me. Anyway, going back to my mother, who I talked about a little bit in my last video, her approach to dealing with my size was not to, and that's height as well as weight, wasn't to just, brush it off or not make light of it. She always was in the habit of telling people I was her little freak. Yes. And that kind of thing can really, it kind of messes your head up. I remember laughing about it, and then I'd, at the time, and then I'd go off alone or when I was laying in bed that night and think about it and get very distraught. So I started thinking of myself as being a very different person, and not in a good way because of that. And once that kind of seed gets planted in your head, it snowballs for a lot of people. And in my case, I kind of almost, I think, tipped over into anorexia at one point, because I went through a phase when I was in high school, early in high school, where I started trying to see how many days I could go without eating more than a certain amount, and I mean a very small amount. No kidding. Like, 200-300 calories for the day. And there were a couple of times where I remember I was up to day 4, day 5, and was getting so physically weak that I was sitting at the table trying to do homework and just about would do a face plant into the table because I was nodding off hours before my usual bedtime. So I'm glad that didn't happen, but I still became very obsessed with trying to get my weight down, and yet at the same time, just having a single parent who, honestly, the relationship was more like I was the parent and she was the kid. She was just that ineffectual, and I really wanted to make it a point to get my weight down, but the stress, the thing I turned to was food. I never experimented with drugs. I never got into drinking. I just ate. And, it's kind of funny because at the tail end of high school in my senior year, after having been as heavy as probably 270, 280 as a freshman and a sophomore, I got all the way down to about 235, which left me, when I was sitting down, just a little bitty tiny belly pouch because I was so active. I rode a bike everywhere, walked everywhere, only used the bus when the weather was bad because back then the buses in Las Vegas were horrible. They weren't even worth it. I could beat the bus on a bike going almost anywhere because of the way the service was just so bad. So, I was really active, but still a little bit overweight. And one thing that I've never forgotten is, I believe after I graduated high school, before I let the 235 slip and started gaining massive amounts of weight at that point, or it might have been a little bit before the end of high school, but when you're a teenager and you're really trying to cultivate an interest in a partner, girlfriend, what have you, you generally want to look your best. And of course, the marketing hype that's present now was also present then for designer clothing and fashion and labels and brands. And I remember going into a store called Miller's Outpost back then, and I wanted to check out the jeans and the shirts and stuff. So I go in, and at the time I was wearing 42 pants, which I don't think I could realistically get far below a 38 because of the way I'm built. I'm just too wide and too thick to really get down to like a 34 or 36. But I was a 42 and could have stood to be in a 38 or a 40. And so I go into this store and I'm looking around and I notice that there are no pants in 42 or 40. 38 was what they topped out in. And the shirts, they barely had anything, even an extra large, which an extra large was about the right size for me. A large was just way too tight. Excuse me, I did not get much sleep last night, and I'll explain why. It's actually good news after several days of bad. But I went up and I asked the sales cashier, do you have anything in a 42 or an extra large shirt? And they're like, no, I've got a few extra large shirts but no 42 pants. And I just got frustrated and I walked out, not in a huff, but just calmly. And the whole way home I just was fighting back tears because I just wanted to buy something I thought I would look good in, and there was nothing. And yet here I was walking miles every day, riding a bike up to 20, 30 miles a day, no exaggeration. And that was it. So my alternative was to go to the Kmart nearby, where they had functional but not peer approved stuff to wear. And that was that. I just bought whatever I could find that fit, and I felt crappy about it. Then, and being called, mommy's little freak did not help. So that was what it was like for me when I was younger. And I know that a lot of other people out there have similar stories. And it really does. It wrecks your head, and it takes a long time to recover. I know in my own case, it's like I don't care anymore. You know, I'm comfortable enough with my appearance for the most part. And the one person whose opinion really matters. Hold on a second, let me get a drink here. Okay, sorry about that. The one person whose opinion really matters is my wife, and she has loved me from the beginning for who I am. You know, even sight unseen, we communicated via email, and that went on for a month or so before I could get a weekend where I could go down and visit. And I didn't think there was anything that could dissuade me from how I felt about her. You know, just from all the time we spent talking and emailing, and she pretty much felt the same. And while she was a bit, you know, surprised by how tall and how big I was when I met her, plus the fact that, you know, my legs were just starting to break down and I had those issues, but she didn't care. She loved my company and I loved hers, and that was the basis of everything. So now that, you know, I'm in my 40s, I couldn't give a rat's ass. Pardon the expression, but, you know, this weight is coming off so I can live a longer, healthier life and be there for my wife and be more productive for her. It's not for anyone or anything else except for her and me. So all of that being said, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about the past few days, excuse me, as well as the horrible time that Jeanette has had trying to get work. The backstory is that her last job was where I also worked for a while. Yeah, there I go again. Sorry. I think after this is recorded, I'm going to go get a nap before Jeanette can get home, so I'm not dragging when she gets through the door. But anyhow, geez, where was I? Oh, yeah, we both worked for the same company, an inbound call center that did tech support and did support for a satellite company, and they did reservations for airlines, you know, just depending on what campaign they hired you into. And she started working there when I was still casino dealing. And then I gave up the casino dealing because my feet and legs and back and everything else were just ripped apart from all the standing. So I just quit. It was just killing me. And after a while, I went down and applied where she worked, and I got hired. And when we were both working there, we were both in the same campaign doing tech support for one of the major mouse, keyboard, webcam, and other computer peripheral manufacturers. And we both did a good job. I know that they graded our calls on a series of metrics, and while that campaign still lasted, if you scored high enough in every category, you could get a monthly bonus. And for almost a year solid, I think I got a bonus every month but one. Once I was proficient enough, which took about 3 months, to be able to handle all the issues and all the calls and to be speedy about it. And the way I got fired was because my legs really started ulcerating badly, and I had to take short-term disability through work and go to the hospital. And my date to come back to work came and went, and I was not in any shape to do it, so they just had to let me go. So I was terminated, but not for any bad kind of reason other than inability to return to work. Jeanette, on the other hand, continued with the company after I was gone, and then the peripheral guys took their business elsewhere, and so she ended up doing a cell phone company for a while, and then after that went to one of the major gaming console manufacturers. I won't say which one, but it had to be either Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft. And she did that for a while. And there was a day where apparently, and I can attest to this, it makes you want to pull out your hair and just scream at the top of your lungs when you get a caller that you need to troubleshoot something with. Like in our case, when I was doing the computer peripherals, it would have been a keyboard or a mouse or a webcam. Before you can agree to replace the product, you got to troubleshoot it, and the customer has to be willing to do the steps, or at the time the policy was they automatically just had to send the product in. If they made a good faith effort to troubleshoot, we would usually, for all but the most expensive products, just send them a replacement. Ugh. Oh, I gotta stop this yawning crap. And I do need sleep. But, so most customers, you could go through the troubleshooting, get them their replacement if we couldn't get it working. No problem for the most part. Every once in a while you would get a kid or somebody who just could not follow directions, and you would end up working with them forever, having to repeat yourself again and again and again and explain things, and your frustration level just goes. And I was to the point where I was just about yelling at a few people, which was a terminable offense, but I never got caught, never had to get written up. Unfortunately, one day Jeanette did, and this was after over 4 years with the company, a good track record, no attendance issues, no discipline issues. She apparently got some kid who wanted to get his console worked on, and he could not complete any of the troubleshooting, and finally she was highly frustrated and was raising her voice. She does remember getting extremely frustrated, and she wasn't belittling the kid, but she was like, look, if you can't follow these directions, I can't help you, and you'll need to have a parent call. Let's get this done because you're wasting time. That kind of thing. And so she got written up for that, and it was a big deal. They went straight to final written warning, blah blah, and told her, for the next 90 days, if you screw up, you're out the door, but after 90 days this will get rolled back to a second warning or whatever, how they do in a lot of companies. Each offense over a certain amount of time, you go up the ladder, but if you do well, they roll it back. So she was on final warning, supposedly. So she straightened up and flew right and did not have any bad calls, did not raise her voice to anybody, was sweet as pie, and granted, a lot of her frustration was having to worry about me with the state of my health. It's hard not to bring something like that to work when you're very worried for somebody that you love. So there was that, but she swears up and down that she did not get nasty or raise her voice or anything with anyone. So the end of the calendar month comes, she has her weekend, and then the first day of the new calendar month she walks in. And the reason why the calendar month thing would be important is because the companies that this center had, that they were doing calls for, the clients would pay for each agent on a monthly basis. So if an agent, excuse me, would have gotten fired on the 5th of the month, well, they were still, billing for the entire thing. So it was important to try and get the full month of work out of the employee. So her first day back, new calendar month, they say, well, you had a bad call and we have to terminate you. And based on what they described, she believes it was the same call she got the final write-up for the previous month. And given how many class action lawsuits and other litigation this call center corporation has been involved with, I don't doubt it for a moment. I think that they probably just wanted to get rid of somebody who was making a couple dollars more an hour than a lot of the other people, because the turnover was huge, low morale, etc. So I think that they just wanted to get rid of somebody to save money, which is all too common a tactic. So she was out of work and decided to take a couple of months off since I had my disability and money wasn't really tight yet. She thought she'd take a month or two off and just relax and tend to me and get over all the BS. In the meantime, her ID expired, and that's something new that, well, not new, but I guess it happened after 9/11, because in Nevada, years ago, if you got a state ID as opposed to a driver's license, it had no expiration date. Back before I had a license, my state ID was good pretty much forever. The only thing they wanted you to do was come in and get a new one with a new photo every so often. But that was at your own discretion. As long as you felt that a police officer or whoever could hold up the thing and look at the picture and go, yeah, that's you, no big deal. So it never occurred to either of us to look at her state ID to check for an expiration, and after she was out of work, it expired. And so she went to go get it renewed, but then found out that because of 9/11 and now everybody's a terrorist, obviously, I won't get into my opinions on all of that, but anyway, she needed to provide birth certificate, marriage certificate, social security card, and I think other stuff on top of that just to get this renewed, right? So she's like, okay, I know where I can get a birth certificate. I've ordered them before. So she goes and sends off to the state of Illinois, Cook County, Chicago, saying, yeah, I need a birth certificate. This is me. Here's where I am. Send it, please, along with some money. Well, we wait. Then she gets everything back in a return envelope saying, sorry, your information doesn't match. So she's like, what the hell? This was never a problem before. So she called him up, and this is where it became a living nightmare for her and for me. Apparently, again, after 9/11, Cook County decided to computerize all of their information rather than having paper records, which is fine. But the problem with that is, because Jeanette was adopted twice by her aunt, technically, her biological mother's sister, by one husband, one adoptive father, then a second adoptive father. So there were two adoptions, two sets of data, and Cook County had that information, but when they went to computerize all the records, they destroyed all of the addendums and just went with the main series of records and input all of those, which meant that they had the wrong adoptive name, and when she sent her information under the current one, nothing matched, so they wouldn't send her anything. Now, where it really gets bad is that, the second husband involved was a military man and was moving every time he changed his socks or somebody sneezed or somebody blinked. All over the place, all over the southeast. So just trying to find the right county and the right state to get those adoption records from the first adoption so that they could be sent to Cook County so that Illinois could update their stuff literally took a year. Just trying to find the right county because her mom couldn't remember, and her adoptive father, this second one, is a real piece of work. That's not anything I'm going to bother getting into, but let's just say I have no respect for this man, and leave it there. So, it took her a year to be able to get her birth certificate so she could get her ID, and by then, we were just on my income, and it didn't even occur to us that we could get food stamps without her having ID, which living on one disability check for two people is impossible. And we are in fact eligible for food stamps, and right now we're getting them. And as soon as Jeanette can find a job finally, we won't have to worry about that anymore. But we didn't even know we could have been getting food stamps, so we were without those for over a year when rightfully they were available to us. And you want to talk about just living in discouraging conditions, poverty, can't afford anything, can't do anything. Well, that was us. Anyway, she finally got her birth certificate and her ID, and since then she has been looking for work, and it's been horrible. Either nobody is hiring, or they're not hiring and they won't even give out applications, or they're not hiring and they will give out an application but then it goes into the pile, or you can go to our website and put in an online application, which frankly I think is the worst idea ever. Not really so much the online applications, but all of these companies do these personality assessments, which, pardon the language, are nothing but absolute bullshit. Just stupid. And they're designed to try and assess your work ethic and whether or not you're going to steal all the office supplies, and whether you're going to, knock out your boss over a minor disagreement, blah blah. I don't think they accomplish anything, and furthermore, somebody like my wife, who has been my caregiver at times when I could barely move my arms, could barely get up and walk, and was almost 100% dependent, did all that without a complaint, loved me anyway, cared for me anyway. Somebody who's that devoted and loyal, and who kept her last job for several years, even though it was a termination, they deserve work. And they don't deserve to be judged on a stupid test. And, there was one company, she went through an hour process of all these test questions and doing the online app, and at least they were nice enough to email her back saying, well, your whatever personality score, you're not outgoing enough, you said you would steal the pencils and not the styrofoam coffee cups, so you're out. And then there was the interview the one interview in the space of over a year she actually got until today, which was for a cell phone store in one of the most heavily Hispanic areas of Las Vegas. Now, I'm not bigoted, she's not bigoted, we're not racist whatsoever, but let's be realistic here. If you want to call somebody, when the application had a question, do you know any other languages other than English? And the answer is no. Why would you offer to have a non-Spanish speaker go into a 90% Hispanic area of town for an interview at a cell phone store? Why would you have them waste their time plus $5 on a daily bus pass when, this was last summer when our electric bills were through the roof, and that $5 bus pass was 2 days worth of food? But she went, and they interviewed her, and then of course they called her back saying, oh, we never could have hired you because you don't know Spanish. Well, no kidding. That was just infuriating, that the one interview that they called her for would be so lame and so stupid. And yeah, I know, I guess most people would think at this point, well, you just take it all in stride. But again, the $5 that was involved, that we had to borrow from our roommate for her to make the bus trip there and back, over something which could have been settled on the phone. Hi, Jeanette, I'd like to have you come in for an interview, but I need to know, are you bilingual? No, sir, sorry, I'm not. Okay, well, thanks for your time, but you wouldn't be able to work here because a lot of our customers are Spanish speakers. But thank you and have a good day. Okay, well, enough about that. Let's move on to the good thing, and I'll close this video out because I'm going to push 40 minutes again. And generally, I want to aim to keep these at 20. And obviously, right now, that's not working. But yesterday, Jeanette went out to the store to get us a few grocery items, and phone call comes in. And I look at the caller ID, and I'm like, well, who the heck is this? And of course I'm thinking bill collector or somebody for our roommate, because I didn't know what the acronym in the caller ID was about. Anyway, I answer, and the gentleman says, yes, is Jeanette there? And I was like, well, she's out. And of course I'm immediately thinking this could be an interview. And anyway, one of the large big box chains called her in, and she's out there at the store right now and will be interviewing for an overnight position, which works out good for us because we're mostly day sleepers, and not really by choice either. It's better to be a day sleeper when you're dealing with a bed bug infestation, which I'm going to do a video on that lovely aspect of our lives, because it bears mentioning, at least in my mind. I don't care, in the first video I said there would be times that I would go off on personal stuff and it wouldn't be about eating veggies, and this is one, and there will be a few more, but only a few. For the most part I want to stick to the positive, but I have to be honest, it is actually helpful being able to sit here, talk to the webcam, get my thoughts out, put it up on YouTube, and maybe get some feedback, which there hasn't been a lot. I don't know if there ever will be, and if not, that's fine, but this is helping me a lot, really. So she's out there now at this interview, and it's for an overnight position, part-time, and we don't care. 30 hours a week, would, at $8 an hour, would give us 5 times or more what we're getting in food stamps. And then the only expense that would have to go along with that would be a monthly bus pass, which is half of what we get in food stamps or a little less. So we're looking at, a net gain of several $100s a month, and I'm all for it. We need it. Oh yeah, I forgot this one thing, going off on everything else. The other day when she was out, she went with a bus pass that she had to an area of town about 6 miles away, and it was a windy day, and she decided not to put the bus pass in the usual place, but instead in her pocket, thinking it would be easier to get to when the bus pulled up. Well, she lost the bus pass. And when she came home, she was crying and told me, and I couldn't stay mad for more than a minute or two. I mean, accidents happen. But if you think for even a second that right now, with the bike, the exercise bike, and the seat, and the clothes that we bought for me, that there's any extra money for another bus pass, wrong. So we were just like, oh boy. And, after I got the news, at first I sat here just really pissed off, and after a few minutes, that gave way to just a dejected feeling, and just like waves of nausea and a headache, pounding tension in my head. And I had to suck that all up and try to calm Jeanette down and let her know that, yeah, I'm annoyed, but I'm not going to stay angry. We'll get over it. We'll get through it. And ultimately, we ended up calling her brother, not brother-in-law, my brother-in-law, but her brother, who is just the nicest guy. I met him last summer along with my mother-in-law and her partner, her boyfriend, and they're all great people. And her brother opened up an account for her and put a couple $100s in it. And he said, this way, if you have any other problems and need more help, I can just deposit some money. Which, I mean, you can't ask for nicer than that. Not that we want to ever have to ask again or take advantage of it. And he also said, this initial $200 is not a loan. I do not want you paying it back. So we're waiting for the card to come in the mail so she can go to an ATM and get the money for a new bus pass. For today's interview, she had to borrow, like before, $5 for a daily pass. And hopefully she'll come back with good news. The human resources guy did say there's a lot of people he'd be interviewing for just a few positions, but our fingers are crossed. So hopefully in the next couple days I'll be doing a new video with some awesome news. With everything that's gone on, I have not exercised, unfortunately. After my last day where I did the 15 minutes, for 2 days I was in hideous pain, just constantly. 15 minutes on an exercise bike should not do that to someone, but when you're starting from literally square zero, then yes, any activity is going to beat muscles into submission that aren't used to being used. Then the third day was the bus pass incident, and I wasn't going to do anything after that except go to bed. So that was 2 days ago, and now finally today I'm in an exercising mood, so I'm going to get that done later after some rest. And hopefully here before long I'll be back with a very happy video. It would be nice to put one up and be able to say that yes, we have a second income. we don't need to rely on the food stamps anymore. So stay tuned, and I'll be back with something before long. If you made it through this, I really do appreciate it. As always, I hope I didn't bore you to tears. It's not my aim here. It's not my aim to be too wordy either. Just need to get off my chest, what's on there, and ease my mind. And I've done that, and I thank you for watching, and I'll be back again soon. Thank you.